Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you're listening to. My name is Marcus Hemsley, and welcome to this Million Tree Pledge new member interview. And today I'm delighted to be joined by James Cannings from MSQ. So James, I'm going to jump straight in like I do with everybody. Why did MSQ decide to take the Million Tree Pledge?
Well, that is an excellent first question, Marcus. For us, it's very much part of our, what I kind of class as our kind of go beyond strategy, without pulling up slide decks and running through that in detail. But, MSQ is, in general terms, is a professional services company, right? We, global digital marketing group. So, and we, might get into my journey later on, but it became obvious to us quite quickly that, as a successful professional services company, we don't have an enormous carbon footprint. We don't have an enormous scope 1 emissions from manufacturing, enormous scope 3 from distribution of physical products. So it was relatively kind of, cost effective for us to very quickly become, a carbon neutral organization, which is why, we've gone beyond that and with immediate effect became carbon negative, i.e. we offset a lot more tons of CO2e than we output. So it's the go beyond piece is partly, because we can, luckily we're a successful growing business, and so we can afford to do a lot more. I think we recognize that there are lots of businesses and individuals who won't, and I don't mean that in a completely negative way. Some just financially can't. In developing nations, this isn't priority number one when you're struggling to put food on the table, etc., etc. So those who can do more than their fair share should, and that's been a really key part of our strategy in terms of going carbon negative, and the Million Tree Pledge is just an extension of that. We don't plant trees as part of our offsetting strategy. We do that through ecology. One of the things I love about that platform is they tend to steer away from tree planting as an approach for offsetting, although you can do it. The science is a little bit debatable, how many trees, what type of trees, over what time period, and the offsetting is more about protecting the forest in the first place, and a bunch of other sort of renewable energy schemes and ethical schemes. So the tree planting is something in addition in its own right, and so the Million Tree Pledge was just a fantastic and obvious thing that we could get behind as a group as part of that strategy of just doing more to make up, I think, the inevitable shortfall across business and individuals really in tackling climate change.
So I love what you're saying about going beyond, because actually a million trees massively goes beyond your impact on the environment. And you've been quite big in calculating that. I wonder if you talk about, how you've calculated your emissions and how much more the Million Tree Pledge will be doing.
Yeah. So that was definitely a big part of my journey. Look, I'm not an environmental expert by kind of academic background, and I'm a computer scientist, and I guess an entrepreneur. I'm the co-founder of one of the agencies, MMT, that sits within MSQ. Although my full-time day job is very much now as MSQ's Chief Sustainability Officer, which is lovely. But the journey started, in 2019, which was the 20th anniversary of my business, and a point where myself and my co-founder, like lots of people, just kind of wanted to do more. We had kids; they were asking us about this stuff. We were concerned about this, but really, we're pretty clueless. What was our carbon footprint? How do you measure it? And I didn't know whether it was a ton or a million tons. Like that, I didn't have any kind of concept of of scale. And so I said to Ben, my co-founder at the time, look, I'll just go and model it. I'll go and work it out. And I remember thinking that would be pretty easy, and I'd just Google stuff. I'm sort of fairly techie, so I thought, well, there'll be lots of calculators, and I'll plug some numbers in. And I was also at the time getting ready we were actually at that point in 2019 part of a PLC called BHERD that was subsequently bought by MSQ. But for anyone who's done the kind of the PLC thing, the numbers are all important. I mean, financials always are, but particularly within a PLC, there's lots of quarterly reporting. And I was getting ready to actually present to the leadership there, a strategy for becoming carbon neutral over a period of time, and trying to work out how we'd have to change our financial model, and maybe we'd have to put our day rates up, or do something with clients and say, well, if you pay extra, we could do this, that, and the other. And to cut a long story short, I found modeling really difficult. And I went on a journey and learned all about a load of stuff I never set out to learn about. I didn't know anything about scope 1, scope 2, scope 3, what all those things like even meant, how you model it. And I found that the modeling tools actually were not great and confusing, and and also there was a lot of heavy documentation, 400-page PDFs on on the greenhouse gas protocol stuff. It was really quite intense as still as a relatively small business, but I sort of persevered and ended up developing my own calculators, my own tools, just spreadsheet based, pulling data from wherever I could, using the best bits of different models and sort of pulling it together. And when I worked out what our carbon footprint was, and the first thing you do is you kind of go and look at, well, I wonder what that would cost to offset. There was this kind of fall off my chair moment when I realized how cheap that was to do. Now, offsetting isn't the answer, but it's the first point. And when it was literally like I could have just done it, and this was for MMT, a company of 100 at the time. I could have just done it on my credit card and barely even told the finance team. And so that's when the realization that okay, as a professional service business, we can and we should and we must do more. We should absolutely be carbon negative. So we pledged that as our carbon footprint came down, as it has over the years, as we put in various initiatives, and COVID certainly dropped it a lot, that we would never reduce our offsetting. So we locked in our offsetting on a per head basis on our 2019 base year, and that never comes down. So with immediate effect, really, we began to offset more, and then that just we became part of MSQ, and they loved what we were doing at MMT, and so we rolled that out, and somewhere on that journey I sort of pitched to create a sustainability council within Memeber, that some people might know. It's really kind of an industry body collection of digital agencies, creative agencies, ad agencies across the UK. It's quite well known in that sector, but created their sustainability council with the idea that I could start to run workshops on how to measure, reduce and offset your carbon footprint, just because I was surprised at how hard it had been. And I still think it's harder than it needs to be. I mean, I love the Million Tree Pledge because it's simple, like people can get it. Like you still need to contextualize it with numbers, like what does that cost? What does it mean? How many tons is that? And I realize I haven't really answered your original question. I mean, to give you some context, I mean, Mark, I'll throw the question back to you initially, because the science is debatable, and I know there's different numbers for it, but what's your best guess on the impact in terms of tons of planting 1 million trees? And then I can give you that in the context of our footprint.
Yeah. So according to our good friend Dennis at Ecology, he said it's 308,000 tons over 25 years. I've seen it put in other ways. One of our other new members, Alex from Climbing Trees, put it as we're covering 1,200 people's carbon footprint a year. So it's looking at ways, right? I was assuming what the average carbon footprint in the UK is, maybe 10 tons or something. So this goes 300,000 tons. I mean, that's going to be significantly more than your lifetime emissions and
well, it's huge. So let's just try and put that into context. So I've just broken out my calculator, and if you did that, then it's about 12,000 tons a year for 25 years, right? If that's right, 300,000. And as we said, the science is debated. I've seen, that number moved around quite a bit, but that's probably about in the ballpark. I mean, that's a sort of sensible number. So 12,000 tons a year. So for context, MSQ, a company of 850 people, global company, flying all over the place, far too much in 20. So I'll give you our 2019 pre-COVID footprint, where we've got people flying over to the US office and around the world. This is 850 people commuting, flying around on trains, just doing normal stuff, building websites and all that stuff. Our annual footprint was in 2019 was roughly 3,500 tons. So it's a significant amount. Like, it puts that into context, like 12,000 tons a year, and we're going to try and plant these 1 million trees over the next 4 or 5 years. I'm a bit vague with that, and I will go faster if I can. As I explained, we're a company, we're a group of 9 companies, each of whom are sort of very supportive of what we do. do centrally at MSQ, but do sort of manage their own budgets and things like that. So part of my job is to sort of bring our own people on that journey and try and get that faster. But it puts it into context. Doing that over 5 years, or however you swing those numbers, even the sort of 12,000 a year, is a significant number in terms of that go beyond strategy. So we will continue to offset at about that amount, even though our footprint now because of COVID is lower. We still offset around about 3,000 tons a year. That number, that's a bit confusing. That number will increase as headcount increases. That's the only way to do it properly. It has to be on a sort of head basis, but so it will increase over time. But 12,000 tons a year, even over that 25 years, it's a massive number. It's a massive difference, even for, as you say, a relatively large company like MSQ. So it's a huge initiative for us. We're really excited to get behind it. And as you say, it's just something because ecology make that simple, because people can. Well, not necessarily people can quite picture 1 million trees, but you can contextualize it in terms of football fields, and people understand 1 million, and people understand. Well, people don't understand 300,000 tons, but you can contextualize that, and you can contextualize 12,000 tons. I think, what is it, the average UK person? I mean, again, the figures move around a bit. It's somewhere. I see anywhere between sort of 6 and 12 tons, those sort of numbers, and 10. But even I think those wealthier who are buying lots of stuff in society, so even around about 10 tons per year. 12,000 tons. Again, you can contextualize this stuff quite nicely for people and companies. But it's a massive number, and so the more people we can get on that, it has a genuinely exciting impact. And as how many people did you say it's the equivalent of? That's a lovely way of putting it.
It's 1,200 people a year. It's random people in the UK. It's 10 tons, right? But obviously it'd be twice that if they were doing 5, which with the sort of decarbonisation of the energy sector in the UK, with more people starting slowly to move to electric cars, that number's only going to go down, and it's the compounding really, because like you say, in 5 years' time, MSQ would have planted those trees. And then each year there'll be another 12,000. Sorry,
and then as long as I'm still around beating the drum, that won't be the end of our tree planting. It's like, right, okay, good. Now we're going to plant another 1 million trees. Can we do that faster? I haven't had any sign off on that budget-wise, but why shouldn't we? Just keep going.
I mean, you've quite rightly built into your model headcount growth because the business will continue to grow. So obviously, assuming that you'll be, I don't know what your growth targets are. If you're growing at sort of 10, 20% a year in 5 years' time, there's going to be a lot more people, but that gives you more room to plant even more trees and do other initiatives as well.
I look both. Anyone who's going through sort of, we've done sort of science-based targets. You can. You need to look at absolute reductions and absolute growths, and those. We look at emissions per head. For that offsetting, but which is an intensity value. You can do emissions per product, emissions per head, like whatever. Both are important. It's super important that we offset based on emissions per head. We certainly target reductions in emissions per head because that's the best sort of KPI in business terms for me to target, because it helps me know that we're making good reductions, because in a sense it filters out headcount growth, which as a professional services company is a big driver of emissions. More people commuting, business travel, more stuff that we have to buy for them to get their work done, more home worker emissions, we track that, as well as office emissions. But it's super important that we also report and try and get those intensity emissions to a point where our absolute emissions are reducing as well, even if we are growing. And that's that again, probably one for another day. That is just because we can pat ourselves on the back, but kind of GDP growth and commercial growth, are opposing forces with this stuff. And so I think absolute reductions are super important as well. But Yeah, no, it's to answer the original question, a million trees, even for a company of our size, is a very, very significant addition to the impact that we're having, even as a carbon negative business. It's, you know, by your numbers, the impact is 4 times the impact of our offsetting, and we're offsetting at the moment probably double what our carbon footprint is because of COVID. That will go back up, but it's hugely important and a meaningful number.
And the other thing you're doing, which isn't directly MSQ, or it may be, is obviously all of this journey you've been on from 2019 and all of this stuff, because a lot of people watching it think, gosh, this is a lot of calculation and work, etc. But you're about to launch the course that you were doing, and you've sort of dry run it with the Beamer members, myself included. It's a really good course that just makes it simple for businesses of any size to actually start doing these calculations. You're giving them the spreadsheets and everything. I wonder if you could talk a bit to that, because you're launching that on the 6th of September 2021, so people can sign up. And
yeah, I'm sure. I hope by the time this video is up, it will be there. And I don't know, we'll find some ways to, I don't know, share a URL or something like that. But yeah, it's on the Future Learn platform, or you can find it via our Beamer sustainability page. But yeah, look, you know, we've got the go beyond strategy, right? So the Million Tree Pledge is all about how, as a company, can we go further than just the basics of measuring and reducing and being a carbon neutral business. Like, how can we go beyond? And then another really key pillar, part of my strategy is about influence. You know, I'm not the chief sustainability officer of a huge company, a huge manufacturing company. You know, so to have a meaningful impact, I have to go beyond, but also try and influence others. And there are different spheres of influence. So there's lots of things we do with and for our staff to encourage them and financially support them if they want help in that area. We do lots of things with our clients, you know, like lots of companies trying to build greener, more sustainable products, in our case, sort of digital solutions for our clients. But the biggest sphere of influence is, like kind of SMEs, right? Small to medium enterprises. Like how can we help other small businesses on this journey? Because that, you know, as I mentioned, in 2019, I was surprised how complicated it was, and I was lucky, big enough, and I had the time to be able to kind of, you know, figure it out and do all the modelling. And so yeah, through Beamer, I started running these workshops, and they were really just kind of really simple 12-week courses on, you know, some background and some basics and some terminology. What is scope 1, scope 2, scope 3? You know, what are all these? You know, what are greenhouse gases? All the kind of the basics. And then we can step people through the modelling of their scope 1, scope 2, and scope 3 emissions using the calculators that I developed, that we open sourced and uploaded to a website called netcarbonnegative.co.uk. But I'd actually encourage people to go to the Future Learn course, because that course steps people through and explains how those calculators work. And whilst there are more and more online tools, you know, coming on to the market, and I think there'll be more and more, I think that, you know, the benefit of a spreadsheet is it's free, it's simple, anybody can use it, and we can step through it and explain the kind of inner workings of it. And that means that when people are perhaps in the future looking to select a more sophisticated online modeling tool for their business, they'll be able to do that from, you know, a position of kind of, you know, greater knowledge about how these things are working, and they're not just a bit of a black box, because I do worry that we'll be kind of comparing apples to oranges. So I did these workshops about, you know, some background, and then stepping through the modeling. Then we started to look at some reduction strategies. You know, what can we do as a business to reduce our carbon footprint? Well, a lot of people kind of start there. And the problem with starting there is, you know, if you haven't measured it, if you haven't modeled your carbon footprint, like anything in business, you can't set a sensible target, and you end up focusing on the wrong things, like, you know, energy, you know, electricity usage and stuff like that, which isn't a bad thing to focus on, but especially if you're a professional service company, it's probably about 5% of your footprint. So you know, tinkering around the edges, going and buying energy efficient kettles. So having done that for a couple of years, the Future Learn course, it was lovely. It was just an opportunity for me to kind of document it, write it down. It's I hope a really simple 6 weeks, just a few hours a week. You can do it in whatever time you like, free to sign up, structured course. As I say, week 1 is just, basics, definitions, terminology. Then we spend a week on scope 1 and 2, a week on scope 3. Then we spend some time looking at offsetting. People don't know about, how do I do offsetting? Is that greenwashing? How do I do verified offsetting? Is it tree planting? Where do I do it? How do I do it? We look at some reduction strategies, not heavily on that, but just some sort of top 10 things you could do. But once you've got your model, it'll become much more obvious, like where the quick wins are. And then the final week is that kind of go beyond stuff. What could I do next? And we talk about the Million Tree Pledge. You'll be pleased to hear. What else could you do? We talk about B Corp and EcoVadis and staff incentives and other things that you can do. And look, it's aimed, I hope, at any small to medium business anywhere in the world. Like, it could be local butchers or hairdressers to professional service agencies, even small manufacturing businesses, because I think they still need help. I think there are brilliant resources out there, like the SME, Climate Hub pledge, but it's still kind of, in some ways, an overwhelming array of resources that you've got to wade through.
Yes.
And as an entrepreneur myself, like, small companies don't have time. They don't have chief sustainability officers. They don't know. So, and the UK at least is made up of SMEs, and we're a service economy. So if we, yes, we need the big companies to do their bit, but if we don't mobilize all the little businesses, who actually employ a huge number of people and can have help and influence and support those people, then, then, well, not that we've got a problem, but, I don't want to put a negative slant on it, but I think that's where I want to help. I'm not from big business, I'm not the right person to go and help, BP or Vodafone, on their reduction strategy. But what I can do is take all my learnings, create this course, and basically try and help any small business to get started, because it is quite simple and it is quite cost effective. It does need a bit of time, and I'm mindful of the fact that people don't have time, but by packaging it up in a hopefully a really kind of bite-sized, simple course for small businesses, we can kind of get that message out there, and people won't have to go through the learnings that I've done, and then we can keep iterating on the course as people feedback on it. So thank you for allowing me the plug. Appreciate it.
Well, I think it's essential, because it's, a lot of people watching either have taken the Million Tree Pledge or are doing something with ecology, but they also want to get, on top of this, measurement and reduction side of things. You used a really good word there, overwhelming. And I people say, this is just too much. I'm trying to run a business, and as small business owners, we know that stress, right? The 3 a.m. waking up and worrying about, is this client going to leave? What's going on? What's going to the staff member? All these sort of things. And that almost takes more emotional bandwidth. The solution I've come across, and this comes from a friend of ours, Gav from Cayenne, but he set up a sustainability squad. So that's what I've done at Fountain. I've said to the guys, there's 50 of us at Fountain, I said, right, who wants to be part of the sustainability squad? And there's about 12 people. So now when your course goes live, James, on the 6th, I will be sending it to the sustainability squad, and they can do it in their spare time, because they are committed and passionate employees that want to do something extra. So rather than, the founders having to go, gosh, I need to find 2 hours a week for 6 weeks or whatever, actually we've got, we're empowering the team, and they're loving it as well, because I think actually a lot of employees now are demanding that from their employers, even it's still in SMEs as well. They want to know that they're part of a business that is going beyond profit and actually trying to create a sustainable planet in the decades to come. So no, I think it's brilliant. When we put this on, we'll definitely link to the future learning.
Okay, no, that's really kind. Yeah, and look, there are huge. You can make this a win-win, and that's always really important. I think being entrepreneurial helps. I get that. I can have more impact if I kind of help things, be more commercially successful within an MSQ. And we've had numerous new starters, come to those agency leads and say, oh, one of the reasons I joined is, like, I was really impressed with your sustainability, credentials. It's fantastic for attracting talent in a time where getting brilliant people in through the door is really hard, and retaining them. So yeah, those sorts of initiatives are great. The other thing that we'll be doing, and again, I don't want to kind of drop the modelling tool, without going about that too much, is super simple. Like if you just want to get started, you can, if you're a small business, if you're 5 people, 10 people. If you're 50, you might have to do a bit of a survey and it might take a week, but within a few hours, you can just fill it out and you'll get a really good picture of your carbon footprint, scope 1, 2, and 3. Without getting too sort of technical about it, for bigger companies, and once you start getting into, the years roll on and you focus on the reduction strategies, one of the key areas of a reduction strategy becomes looking at your supply chain. So if you take a big company, they need to look at, getting more sustainable suppliers, and what they'll need to do is understand in more detail what the carbon footprint of those suppliers are. So if you're a small business, and you're a supplier to a larger business, you will start over time to come under pressure, because they'll start to survey and they'll ask you what's your carbon footprint. And if you don't know, it doesn't look good, that they can use some generalized spend-based modeling to calculate a footprint based on what they spend with you. But there'll be more pressure to understand what your actual footprint is. So it helps small businesses. Larger businesses that I'm talking to, and we'll be doing this as well, is that when we survey our supply chain, which we'll start to do on an annual basis to find out what their actual carbon footprint is, so that we can start to assess who's doing well and pick more sustainable suppliers as part of our reduction strategies. Those that don't know, we can send them on the course. It's not about like, okay, well, you're out then, you don't know. It's like, okay, great, how can we help you? There's another sphere of influence. Like, okay, you don't know, great, we've got this 6-week course you could go on. So I think there's lots of use cases for it, because there just isn't enough kind of simple support for small businesses. So anyway, that's enough plugging my course. I hope it's useful.
No, I think it's vital, because I think everyone in the Million Tree Pledge community is probably going to be taking the course if they're not already doing something like that with a consultant already, right? So I think it's important we make some noise. There will be people watching who don't feel they're big enough to take the Million Tree Pledge and wondering what they can just do to get started. So I don't know what your sort of top 5 things would be for anyone who's like, right, I need to get on top of this. It's 2021.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, and we've debated this one before, I think, Mark, as well, but kind of slightly weirdly, I would say, and I agree, because we kind of agreed in the end, that what I would do tomorrow is, and just to point out that neither Marcus or I have any affiliation with ecology. I think they are, we, other than we spend money with them, they're our offsetting partner. We know that they're a very ethical, brilliant business, and to be honest, their offsetting tree planting prices are incredibly competitive, which is important. You want to get as much impact as you can for your money. So with that said, I honestly would go and sign up on ecology as a business. One of the things, they've got a very simple model where you can just go onto ecology, sign up for a business account, and just say, I've got this many people, I've got 5 staff, and they will use some average calculations. I think the base level is 11 tons per year per member of staff, plus 144 trees. If you've got senior execs that fly around in private jets, you can tag that as well, and they'll do a bit more for that. But you can essentially become what they would then call a sort of climate positive workforce. Depending on your business, you're not necessarily climate positive or carbon negative. Those things mean the same thing. Business, especially if you're kind of a manufacturing business. If you're a professional services business, it probably is enough to make that claim. But it's a great place to start. If that's all you do, then I would probably call you out for greenwashing, right? I'm hesitant when I use that term, because people have often said to me, "Oh, offsetting is greenwashing," and it goes through only a couple of kind of loops or hops. I've had people come to me and say, "Oh, offsetting is a really bad thing to do." It's not. It's a brilliant thing to do. It's not a scalable solution to the problem of climate change, but it puts investment in. If we all do that tomorrow, if we all signed up to offsetting projects like the ones offered by ecology, it puts money into great projects to protect deforestation, as I mentioned, and renewable energy projects and ethical schemes that they have, like low emission cooking stoves in Honduras and all sorts of wonderful projects like that. So it's a brilliant thing to do tomorrow. That's step 1. Step 2, I would say, I wouldn't even necessarily say jump on the course, but the important thing about modeling your footprint, as I mentioned, is if you don't model your carbon footprint, you can't put a useful reduction strategy in place. The top things are likely to be similar for most businesses. So, flick over to renewable energy, supplier, like get your offices on 100% renewable energy suppliers in the UK. Bulb, Octopus, Ecotricity, whatever. It's often cheaper because we're very good in the UK at producing a lot of renewables onto the grid. If we all do that tomorrow, we won't wake up with windmills in our back gardens. Like, they won't be able to. But it puts, it's demand and supply. It puts billions of investment in the right place. If we all switch like that, it tells, and money talks. It's a little bit easier to switch away from gas. Like, actually most of our MSQ businesses aren't on gas. Most modern offices are kind of electrically heated and cooled, but you try and switch away from gas if you can. If you're thinking about moving offices, avoid one with kind of old school gas boilers and things like that. And that's really easy. Like, that's, you kind of use scope 1 or 2. If you've got fleet vehicles, I'd probably plug schemes like Octopus EV. Octopus, obviously the well-known kind of green energy company. They've got a great electric vehicle scheme. There's in the UK again, is a fantastic. Well, they've changed the laws, or the tax laws for EVs, so it's now an official salary sacrifice scheme, plus you can save the national insurance. And so those familiar with child tax credits or pensions or cycle to work schemes, you can now save between 40 and 60% off the monthly cost of an electric vehicle. So if you walk into a garage and a Tesla is going to cost you £500 a month, if your company has an electric vehicle scheme, it will be £250 a month. It's a very significant saving. So businesses can, essentially build up an electric vehicle fleet for themselves and for their staff. It's a great staff initiative to put in place. We've just rolled that out. And then, without getting into the specifics of individual companies, if you're a manufacturing company, it's quite different. But if you're a professional services company, then it's going to be commute, business travel, and all the goods and services that you buy. So again, electrifying your commute, driving less, flying less, more online meetings, less driving around the place. That's relatively, or become easier post-COVID. And then it's, as I mentioned, looking at your supply chain. That's a longer tail over the next few years to just look Absolutely. At all the professional services companies that you work with. Do they know their footprint? Have they modelled it? Have they switched to renewable energy, et cetera, and it all cascades down. So it's there's not rocket science. I've probably not said anything that's of any kind of surprise to anybody there. But what is important is to do some modelling as soon as you can to make sure you are focusing on the right place. But you can kind of do it backwards. You can start with ecology, start offsetting, start tree planting, and start thinking about switching to renewable energy and bringing in electric vehicle lease hire schemes. And whilst you're doing the modelling, don't spend too long doing all the modelling before you kick these things off. Because we haven't got time to waste really.
No, this has been, and on that, I want to just wrap up with this question I ask everyone is, how confident do you feel at the minute that we can turn this around with the climate crisis?
I wonder how this sort of relates to others that you've asked it, but hugely confident, hugely optimistic and hugely positive. And generally I find that's true of the people working in this area, because if you weren't that, if you've read all the doom and gloom and scary statistics, and they are very, very scary, and didn't think we could fix it, then you just wouldn't be doing it, right? You'd have jacked it all in and gone and just gone to play golf or live on an island or whatever and just give up. So you've got to be positive, and I guess maybe I'm a techie as well. Like I'm really excited about how much noise there is, and maybe I'm in a bit of an echo chamber with it all because of the world I work in, but and I'm mindful of that, but excited about the pledges that are coming through for 2030, like lots of people going much faster than the kind of UK's 2050 goal for net zero, really trying to do a lot by 2030. I'm not convinced that everything that we're doing, is enough between now and 2050. I think we can do a lot, and I'm excited to see how far we can get, and I'm excited to be the generation. If we had the industrial age and we had the digital revolution, I'm excited to be the generation that was part of converting our planet to almost infinite green energy. Like, how awesome is that? That's our legacy. I do think there are some incredible technologies out there. So it's because, so i.e. if the status quo remains, I don't think it's going to be enough. But I think that, combined with some of the really exciting technology that's being worked on around, whether it's kind of all sorts of interesting forms of direct carbon capture, or kind of green, innovative ways of doing, nuclear power, companies like TerraPower, which are looking at, safe, atmospheric pressure-based nuclear power plants that can be powered by existing nuclear waste, and et cetera. So, and just those are just a couple, and there are all sorts from basic ones, like, I saw someone develop the whitest paint ever, which sounds ridiculous, but it was an almost perfectly white paint, and the idea would be you could cover rooftops of skyscrapers and cities and just reflect, and I forget the equivalent number of kind of kilowatts that was being reflected back. And so as a sort of techie, I'm super excited to sort of see how that transforms things over the next 20-30 years as well. But I'm not about to sit on my hands and wait and hope that those save us in the meantime.
No, I it's funny, when I put my positive hat on, I gave a talk to my team about taking the Million Tree Pledge, and I sort of fast forwarded, because my grandmother passed away this year and she was 99, so I fast forwarded to when I would be 99 in the year 2083, and what headlines I wanted to see. And I met these headlines like, "We've done it," 2 trillion tons of greenhouse gases drawn out of the atmosphere, parts per million back to 200. We replanted 2 trillion trees that were chopped down in the 20th century.
Yeah, I mean, imagine that headline. I think we've had it in the last couple of years. There's been days where, like, the whole of the grid has been provided by renewable energy. Now, it's been in the middle of the day when it's been really windy and sunny and nobody's using any power, but it's a nice stat. Like, hey, right now the UK is like 100%. We went over 50% for the year or whatever it was. But what a cool headline it will be when we can say, on this day, like at this point, the world was 100% powered by renewables. What a day, right? There's no coal-fired power stations, but there's nothing. There's no gas. I mean, that could be in our lifetime, and that or hopefully it needs to be.
If not, we're in trouble.
No, we're in trouble. That would be an awesome headline, and an awesome point to sort of think back to when it was a bit of a pipe dream, but to sort of go, we'll see that day where it's like, right now, like the sun and the wind are powering the whole world. How cool is that?
On that day, I'm going to pick up the phone and give you a call.
Give me a call.
Wherever we are in the world, and say it happened. You forecast it, James.
Let's do that.
All right,
cool.
We should wrap up there. Final question: how can people get hold of you? What's the best way to get hold of you if they've got questions about the course or what MSQ are doing?
I'm easy to find on LinkedIn. Always have to be emailed. We can put that up. It's james.cannings@msqpartners.com. Really happy for people to do that. I'm pretty hopeless on other forms of social media. Actually, I should get more active on Twitter. I'm busy with so much other stuff. But I think kind of LinkedIn, find me on that, ping me an email. Always happy to chat. My job is to chat and to engage and influence and help people. So I spend a lot of my time doing that. So please do, reach out.
Brilliant. Well, thanks for your time, James. Really appreciated. And
thanks
for watching,
Marcus. Thanks for all you do. It's a brilliant initiative. I hope we can get as many people on board as possible.
I think we might.